this morning. Yes, we have off-season Patriots news. Let's get it started right now. A trade involving the Raiders and the Patriots. The Patriots sent a 5th-round pick to the Raiders for Trent Brown and a 7th-round pick. I believe the 7th-round pick is in 2022. Whatever.
Both of them are.
Both of them are. So you've got a late pick swap here. The Patriots have reworked the contract of Trent Brown. It's now going to be a 1-year deal up to, and that's a key phrase here, up to $11 million. And I saw your reaction in the email, and your reaction to this trade is, meh.
Yeah. Nick, let me just say my take's evolving, and I think it's going to need to evolve for everybody. And first of all, before I get going, if I sound a little choppy or I sound a little bit weird, I am a little bit under the weather, but I'm just that tough, Nick.
Oh, look at this guy.
I got to show up.
You can't hold down Bedard. He's going to let it rip.
I heard Trent Brown was coming back. We know, that guy doesn't, fake injuries or anything like that to take, any time off with the Niners or the Raiders or anything.
Oh, man, we're 45 seconds in and Bedard's throwing bombs.
So this is going to be an evolving conversation, okay, Nick, between you and I. But let me start here. Okay. Yeah. My initial reaction is, okay, well, where's he playing? Number one, how is the money structured? All right. If he's a left tackle, what does that mean about Isaiah Wynn? If that means that he's playing left tackle for Isaiah Wynn, that means the complete 2018 NFL draft was horrendous. I mean, so they spent a 1st-round pick, and did they trade up for? Sorry, my wife is.
Bedard's phone's going crazy.
This one's just my wife. So I think they trade. Did they trade up for Wynn? I think they traded. Whatever. They ended up with Isaiah Wynn in the 1st round, their first-round pick that year.
Right.
And now what? Now he's a guard who gets hurt a lot. Then they drafted Sony Michel, who is now backup running back, who gets hurt a decent amount of time. And that goes along with all the other not good draft picks they had in that draft. So that's where I start with my questions. What's it mean for Joe Thuney? If Trent Brown is playing right tackle, okay, Marcus Cannon's gone. Okay, no big deal. But you know what? Justin Herron couldn't play there, and you couldn't save a little bit of money. Now we're back into Bill's going with veteran guys instead of saving a little bit of money where Herron looked like he had. Or you could have gone with Owenu at right guard and found a left guard to play. So There's a lot of different thoughts about that. But I will say this, Nick, and why I'm not going to completely rip this trade is because I texted someone that I trust around the team, and I basically said a lot of these concerns. And he said this to me, okay? And I'll read from the text. Wait to judge. So that tells me that there are a lot of other balls in the air right now. Yeah. And that could mean, and it could mean a whole bunch of different things, but let's just speculate for a second, Nick. It could mean the Patriots tag Joe Thuney to trade him. Maybe they take Isaiah Wynn, Joe Thuney, Marcus Cannon, I don't know, whoever, Sony Michel, a bunch of different players, say they're part of a trade for, say, a Jimmy Garoppolo or another quarterback, or, but basically Trent Brown, basically what I'm trying to say is, Nick, Trent Brown very well could be here as a move, a preemptive move for a bigger move where they're going to lose offensive linemen, and now Trent Brown is going to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So it kills me, Nick, that I can't come out strong one way or the other on this. But I will say, I think if I'm a Patriots fan, and look, this is not to go all Zolak and Bertrand, because I was just listening to them, and of course the Patriots do anything, and they think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they think that it's going to lead to, they're going to trade for Deshaun Watson or something like that. Like that's not what you get here, okay? Even though I love those guys, and I respect the heck out of those guys, let's just say Zolak gets a little overexcited about a lot of things in terms of Patriots moves and free agency and things like that, trade deadline stuff. So something could be coming. And if this is part of that, then I'm okay with it. largely, but I still have a lot of questions about what this says about the team, why they needed to do this, what kind of money they lit on fire last year for no reason, what have you. But that's where I am right now off the bat.
Okay, so as far as last year, the Tooney thing, I'm going to put that to the side. As far as what could happen in the future, down the road, this could be the first of many moves. I'm going to put that to the side, and I'm going to look at this deal in a vacuum, considering what I know right now. In considering what I know right now, I actually like this deal. I don't know if I would sit there and say, oh, this is the greatest move of all time, but I like the deal for a number of reasons. First of all, he didn't give up a lot. You know, a 5th-round pick next year.
No question.
Which really is a 6th-round pick this year, right? The way that whole thing works. It's like if you trade a pick for next season in that round, it's like however they figure out the value. But a 5th-round pick next year for a 7th-round pick next year in Brown. So the value, you weren't killing yourself over that. The contract to me is interesting. And again, the up to $11 million is what's key here. We all know that Brown, you mentioned this a little bit spicy earlier about Brown maybe faking some injuries and this and that. So if these are tied to 16 games, I love it because what you're going to get, it's a 1-year deal. Brown's contract will be up once this season is over. He's still a young guy. So he's going to be a highly motivated, theoretically. We don't know if he's going to sit there and poop his pants, but theoretically, he's going to be highly motivated to play all 16 games or 17 games if they move to 17, like it looks like they're going to. He's going to be motivated to play the season. He's going to be motivated to play as good as he can to get another contract, another bite at the apple. So the value, I think, is right. Secondly, it gives you flexibility in the fact that you just mentioned 2 or 3 different things the Patriots can do. I think that's a good thing. They can move Onwenu back to his natural position at guard if they want to. They can move Wynn to guard. And yes, we can sit there and we can deliberate and crap all over the 2018 draft if we want, but I don't think Belichick cares about that anymore. This isn't about 2018. This is about the best offensive line I can put together in 2021. So it allows you the flexibility to move Onwenu back to guard. It allows you the flexibility to move Wynn. It allows you the flexibility if Wynn gets hurt again, that you can move Brown to the left side instead of trying to move somebody else who's a natural guard. So I like the flexibility and the depth that this presents. It also opens up the door for you to release Cannon and maybe create $7 million of space and bring somebody else in. Maybe that's what the text is about to you. Maybe this is about creating more cap space to bring somebody in. I also think this means that David Andrews is back, which I like. I think he should be back. I think he's one of the leaders of this team. And overall, you know, when you look at the financial impact of this move, Greg, really what you're doing is you're saying to yourself, we're going to pay Trent Brown and David Andrews roughly what we were going to pay David Tooney. And Joe Tooney, rather. So when you look
when were they going to pay Tooney that?
Well, what I'm saying is when you're looking at what Tooney would cost you, if this is Andrews versus Tooney, if you can get Andrews and Brown for roughly the price on the base, again, because we don't know, this could be a $5 million base deal for Trent Brown and game incentives bring it up to $11 million. So you could arguably on the base get Andrews and Brown for the price of Tooney. And for me, that's a win. I love Tooney, but that's a win. And if you're telling me that this offensive line on, day one is Isaiah Wynn at left tackle, Onwenu at left guard, Andrews at center, Mason at right guard, and Trent Brown at right tackle, if that's what you're telling me the offensive line is, if that O-line is healthy, I think you could argue that's a top 5 offensive line in football if they're all healthy. So
yeah,
in a vacuum, I like the deal.
Okay. I mean, those are all fair points. And, they certainly they're certainly factual. I mean, look, what the point you made about the Tooney money and Andrews and Brown is legitimate. I just don't subscribe to it because I don't think in reality there's no way that the Patriots were ever going to pay $18 million for Joe Tooney. So that's what my comment was about, that I don't really view it as a comparison because I don't think that was actually in reality. But, who knows? It could have been. And who knows? They could still tag him as part of – they could tag and trade him to somewhere.
Right.
And I was just looking at the 49ers. They have Trent Williams back. They have – is that Laken Tomlinson at left guard? Yes. They need a center. They need a right guard, and McGlinchey is fine at right tackle. So they could use a couple offensive linemen. I'm just trying to think if this is part of a larger deal for, say, Jimmy Garoppolo or something like that. So a couple of things on, well, let's just go back to Trent Brown and sort of the things I have a lot of questions about this deal, and some of those questions. Number one, I hope you're right. I hope that their contract is structured per game, because I do not have a lot of faith in Trent Brown, the professional football player. And he might have been fine here. That's great. But you cannot erase that he quit on the 49ers and he quit on the Raiders. That happened. So they better get per game bonuses in there. And that's where a bulk of his money comes from, because I don't trust this guy at all.
Let me ask you a question. And this is, I don't know the answer to this. Could you believe that maybe, San Francisco and the Raiders approached Trent Brown not in a way that he was responsive to? You know what I mean? Is it possible to say that it takes a certain coach, and it doesn't mean that Belichick's the only coach that can get through to Brown, but is there an argument that, yeah, he's only worked really in one place, and he's only really played up to his potential in one place? Maybe there's something to be said about that New England, Belichick, they know how to get to this guy. And again, with the motivation of the money in the 1-year deal, maybe that's how you push him.
I mean, that's possible, Nick. But I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, and look, yes, it worked here, and you can say what you want about the coaches here and whatnot. But like, okay, one place, 49ers, that's one thing, and I'm not even sure who their offensive line coach is. But two places, like, within like 3 years of each other, like, no, there's a problem there. And so what? The Patriots make it work. That's great. They made it work for 1 year. And keep this in mind. It worked for Trent Brown here because he saw the apple of free agency, or the carrot of free agency coming, where he's going to get paid, sort of like Jermaine Illuminor did this year. And people will say, well, he'll be a free agent next year. Ain't nobody paying this guy after he just quit on 2 of the last 3 teams that he was on. Ain't no chance. Well,
let me ask you this question then. What's the downside?
Let me get my concerns out.
Okay.
And then we could talk about the downside and things like that. So Number one, my point is, his money better be tied into per game roster bonuses,
right?
Because I don't trust this guy. Number two, has anybody informed Trent Brown that Dante Scarnecchia is no longer the offensive line coach here? Because the guy posted a picture on Instagram of him with Scarnecchia. Like, that was the offensive line coach when he was here. Those guys are not here anymore. Right. And I just want to point out that Googe, the first year after Scarnecchia retired, and Googe was the offensive line coach here, they won a Super Bowl. Then Googe was fired the next year. So there's usually a little bit of lag time where the Scarnecchia effect sort of comes down. But, yes, it worked for him the last time he was here, but Scarnecchia was the offensive line coach, and we have 2 different guys now. So I wanted to make that point. The other point I wanted to make is, I just wanted to talk about like where he plays. I mean, he could play left tackle, as we talked about, and that would probably, I mean, I don't know. I guess that would put Wynn to left guard, and you put Owenu at right tackle. That's the way I see it in my mind. But then again, you could have a left side of the line of Trent Brown and Owenu, and that would be one of the most physically imposing left sides of the line in the league.
Yes.
In my opinion, it is part of the reason why when I was listening to Zolak and Bertrand real quick before taping this, they're talking about how like this move tells them that Cam Newton's not going to be the quarterback next year. And my reaction was like, well, I don't know what you're talking about, because to me, this sounds like they're developing their running game. Like Trent Brown is a good he's a decent pass rusher, but he is a hell of a run blocker. I mean, that's what he does. He gets downhill. He imposes his will. He is part of and if you put Trent Brown, Owenu, Shaq Mason, what have you, that is a power running team. And to me, that says Cam Newton. So at least it doesn't eliminate Cam Newton. So that's sort of where I am on Trent Brown. The downside, you said, what's the downside? It's the money. I want to know what the money is. If it's $11 million and you're trusting this guy who's been a turd in the last two places that he's been outside of New England to be a good person and to play for a coach for positional coaches that he's never played for, then yeah, I have concerns. But again, I want to go back to my general point, which is I'm not ready to say one way or the other on this because I think this is a precursor to other moves. Wynn could be traded with, he's got a 5th-year option coming up that could appeal to somebody. Tooney could be tagged and traded. Mason could be traded and Tooney could be tagged and signed here and Mason could be part of a deal. So I think if my source is correct, and he usually does not text cryptically like that unless it means something, I'm ready to wait on this deal a bit, but I'm a little pessimistic. Well, and especially and one last thing. Sorry, Nick.
Sure.
It's just all right. The great aggressive offseason of Bill Belichick is an offensive lineman. I mean, that's how it starts. It's just funny to me that's what. And look, I love offensive linemen. Hopefully it makes the offensive line great. And it's part of this, whole fabric of moves that they make. And this is just the first sort of, appetizer to what's to come. But it's just typical that, they have all this money. They're going to be aggressive. And they spend $11 million on Trent Brown, who might be a right tackle, who you could probably find a right tackle elsewhere. So I just find that funny.
I feel like you're a little bit extra salty today because you're a little under the weather. I look at this again, we got to wait on the incentives. I am intrigued by your guys' text. I wonder what the domino effect is going to be. As far as starting the offseason with an offensive lineman, let's look at who's realistically available. And, right now, it's not like there's this great offensive player that we know that is available to make a move. So you start with the inside out. You start to address things that you can address. It's rather obvious that Belichick feels like there's some movement here on the offensive line. If he's not bringing Tooney back, you have to replace him somehow. So, again, I think it makes sense whether it's Wynn or it's Onwenu who gets moved to the guard position. It makes some sense to me. And as far as the money, I mean, frankly, Marcus Cannon hasn't been the same guy the last 2 years we've seen him play. He just sat out last season. I would not be surprised if he's gone, if he's just cut straight up. So if you're telling me that Trent Brown is going to make about $5 million on the base versus $7 million or so for Cannon, I just really don't see the big deal about it. I think it's a good move. I think it's a reasonable move, and they didn't have to pay a ton. The 2018 draft, you already commented on that. You think it was a terrible draft. And it's
by the way, can we just go through it real quick?
Sure.
If say Wynn is indeed kicked inside to guard, and they've given up on him as a franchise left tackle, so this is, and we already knew that the 2017 draft, outside of Dietrich Wise, which just 4 players, and it was terrible, and Wise will probably be gone this year. The 2018 draft was Isaiah Wynn, Sony Michel, Duke Dawson, Juwan Bentley, Christian Sam, Braxton Berrios, Danny Etling, Keon Crossan, and Ryan Izzo. Woo! That is bad, man.
I mean, I will give credit that at least Berrios is in the league and he can contribute.
That's true.
I'll say that much about that draft. But yeah, I mean, it's not great, and it goes along with a lot of the most recent drafts that we've seen. I do think last year could end up being a good draft for them. But we know the last 4 or 5 years, Belichick hasn't been very good at drafting, talent, especially on the offensive side of the football. So I will say this one last thought on what happened with the Trent Brown trade. I do think this means that the team's going to be very active. And whether or not you get worked up about the offensive line move or not, I think this does tell us that they're going to be active and they're willing to spend money, and that they have their eye on trying to improve, not just in the spots that we think, but across the board. So I think we need to be patient with this offseason for the next couple of weeks to see how all of this falls together.
Fair.
I don't hate the deal. I actually like it. I think it makes the Patriots better right now than they were last season with the depth. If they move Onwenu to the place where Tooney was at left guard. I don't think you lose a ton if you move Onwenu there. And again, I think you could argue that Brown could be an upgrade over Cannon as long as he's focused and he's healthy, which are, as you framed, they are legitimate questions. You know, I was looking around on Twitter, and man, oh man, Greg Bedard, you kind of set the football world on fire. A lot of promotion for this little old podcast, the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles. Although I will say, people, you know, it's Greg Bedard on his podcast. No love for me. That's fine.
Yeah, what's up with that?
It's okay. I'm in the shadows.
The Catman.
They made a lot about your thoughts on Jimmy Garoppolo the last time you and I were together. Just your thoughts on the reaction across, again, Pro Football Talk, many other places talked about this. Your reaction to your plan A, Jimmy Garoppolo take from last week and how it erupted a little bit.
And I actually, breaking news, I just heard from one of my buddies down in Florida that apparently our audio was played on the Dan Patrick show this morning also.
Well, look at that, huh?
the little podcast that could.
That's it. The chugga, climbing up that.
Yeah. So I have a few thoughts. Number one, can we just say, and he didn't respond to me, which is just typical. But I'm getting pretty sick and tired of Mike Florio and the way that he treats certain people, because if you go back and you look at the last couple times my reporting has been referenced on Pro Football Talk, whether it was Easterby or this or what have you, you know what he does? First of all, he's an aggregator. Like he makes money off of repurposing other people's work. That's what he does. And look, quite frankly, you know, I will also say Mike has his own original reporting, and that's actually how he became more known. Was he was sort of like a rumor mill. A lot of agents talked to him, and like he did great stuff with that. But ever since he became more corporate, and you know, he has less of his own original reporting, and he relies on more his interpretation of other people's work. You know, so he's an aggregator because he aggregates other people's work. He doesn't link to my work. He didn't link to our podcast. He didn't link to BSJ. He linked to NBC Sports Bay Area's aggregation of our story. So an aggregator aggregated another aggregator, refusing to give, it just said Greg Bedard. It didn't say Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles or Greg Bedard of Boston Sports Journal. You know, you know, he does this, and it's just that's just wrong. It's just like he's just petty.
I just want to jump in for a second, because some people might be a little lost about, you know, jumping in the weeds of journalism. Greg's point is, when you reference somebody else's work, you not only reference that person and what they said, but you reference where you got it from, because you are getting content from Greg Bedard's Patriots podcast. They can include me or not. I couldn't care less. I was joking around. Mm-hmm. But that's where you're getting it. So that's why, Greg, this isn't, you know, a little tit for tat thing. This is about professionalism. And yes, when you get content from somebody else, you credit that person. You credit that somebody else. Okay,
that's the least that you can do. Is like, if you're going to make money off of my content, my work, the least you can do is give me proper context and point people in the direction like, hey, if you like this, maybe you want to go subscribe to Boston Sports Journal. Instead, he goes out of his way not to do that, which is it's just wrong. And like, I know why he does it, because I was on, after I got laid off for Sports Illustrated, I was on, and I think it's when I was starting up BSJ and I talked about a subscriber model. I had pointed comments about, and Peter King agreed with me, even though he now works at the same place now, and he wouldn't dare say anything. He wouldn't be allowed to say anything about that.
Funny how that.
Yeah, but I made critical comments basically calling Florio out on this bullshit, which is like, these guys are putting good journalists out of work because they're trying to make clicks off them. And they're like, oh, well, I linked to your story. Well, then no, that doesn't help. Like, that doesn't help, you know, reward the original reporting. But anyways, so there's that. And then there's the big thing is Nick, is just sometimes you hit like a dead spot in NFL news. And like, up until today with the Trent Brown trade, and really not many people outside of New England are really going to care about this trade. But between, I don't know, for the last week, I don't know when the last big move was made. Probably was it, you know, who was this Stafford? Goff, maybe Goff.
It was Wentz, and then after Wentz,
Yeah,
it's
Wentz.
quiet. Yep.
Wentz was the last sort of thing, and then you're waiting for the end of the franchise tag period, which is today.
Yep.
And that's interesting because maybe that's the timing of the Trent Brown thing. But we'll have to see. And then, free agency doesn't start until Monday with the tampering period. So there's a dead period. And so people just overreact. There was a void in the news. We stepped up with our reporting, and they just it's overblown. We all know that. But we appreciate the publicity.
We do. We love the publicity. We'll take all the promotion that we can get if it's done correctly, Mike Florio.
Correct.
And, we'll enjoy that. And you're right. I mean, I think if you said this today on the heels of Dak Prescott getting that contract, it's not getting talked about. But hey, that's we hit the timing. Speaking of timing, quarterback timing is starting to get a little bit complicated for the Patriots, Greg.
What do you mean?
Well, that's what you actually had on down as your note.
Oh, sorry. I was just reading the text. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Again, sorry about that. I was
a little under the weather. It's fine.
Yeah, and I'm getting texts like left and right from people. My wife, John Corrales is asking about his Celtic story and like stuff like that. Like there's a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, I wrote a column about it that and who knows, maybe this is. I do think now that I think about it, the timing of today's the franchise tag deadline. They made a move to get Trent Brown. That tells me that maybe something is coming. Maybe they are going to tag and trade Tooney, something along those lines. But in terms of the quarterback, it's either, and we've talked about it before. So, the Jets are really holding everything up. They're at number 2. They're going to straddle the line, to amp up their leverage. Like, do we want Sam Darnold? We're great with Sam Darnold. We're not going to take a quarterback here, and somebody can come and trade up and things like that. And if they do that, and that's April, like that's not any good for the Patriots. If the 49ers really want Sam Darnold, and the Jets are going to play this game with, are we going to hold on to the number 2 pick? Are we going to draft Zach Wilson? Like, what's the deal? If they're going to go on with that until like late April, that's going to stall the 49ers and it's going to stall the Patriots in terms of Sam Darnold and Jimmy Garoppolo. Yep. And so if you're the Patriots, there was some debate because Mike Reese brought this up this weekend, and we've sort of talked about it a little bit, is do you try to, make a better offer try to get the 49ers to basically get off the pot, and I just don't know if that can happen. Maybe it can, because the problem is like, say you do say to San Francisco, all right, we're going to give you the 2 for Jimmy that you gave us. And to make this go, we're going to give you a 5th this year, or conditional 5th or whatever okay. So San Francisco they say, okay, we're going to trade you Garoppolo now. Now their leverage is all gone. Like if it comes to trading with the Jets, now the Jets can hold them over a barrel and be like, you got to give us 4 first-round picks because you don't have a quarterback right now.
Don't have anybody. Yep.
Yeah. And so that stuff is going on. I just think that it could behoove the Patriots just to, basically start on plan B and C that aren't cost prohibitive and leave room for Jimmy Garoppolo down the line if he does shake free. So that means like a Gardner Minshew or a veteran free agent, whatever that might be. If they trade for Gardner Minshew, who makes $850,000 this year, 900 something next year, they could do that for, probably a late round pick right now, or a 5th or a 4th, whatever. And now you have a starter in case the worst case scenario happens. For San Francisco 49ers don't find another quarterback. They don't get one in the draft. They go with Jimmy Garoppolo again. Now you're not caught waiting. And so that's what I mean in terms of the timing is working against the Patriots, but who knows? Maybe they have the deal for Garoppolo lined up right now, and this Trent Brown deal is part of it.
And maybe they have other deals, as you mentioned. Maybe Tooney goes to Philadelphia for Zach Ertz and a pick. Ertz is on the block. We've heard a lot of things about maybe he gets traded over the next day or two. So maybe the Patriots trade Wynn to the Eagles for Zach Ertz in a late round. And now you have your offensive line pretty much set, and you have your number one tight end, and now you make the next move, which could be receive. So these every move we've got to remember, as I mentioned earlier on this podcast, we have to be patient, which is very tough. It gets tougher in 2021. We've got to be very patient. And, this is, you and I have talked about this for the last several weeks, couple of months. This is a puzzle, and Belichick is putting together the puzzle. And Belichick obviously has a head start on all of us. He knows what he's trying to do. He knows the timing that he has to come up with to make all those things happen. And so the Trent Brown move can lead to another move, which could lead to another move. That's how these things work. Yep. And we know that the Patriots have a lot of work to do. So he's addressing multiple needs at different times, and he's got to put this puzzle together. So patience is a virtue. I don't have a lot of it in my personal life. I was hoping that you had some of it, Greg, but I don't think that you do. So we'll just have to judge these deals in a vacuum. And then I think this is going to be one of those off seasons where every couple of weeks, it's a good idea to pull yourself out of the vortex and say, what has happened so far? What needs to happen? And what are the options? I think that's a good idea for all Patriots fans out there. The Trent Brown made. Let's see if this leads to something else. Free agency happens. Then at the end of next week, as you're sitting there watching the NCAA tournament, drinking beer like I'm going to be doing, pull yourself out of it for a few minutes and say, okay, well, what's the next move? The BostonSportsJournal.com member question of the day. Check us out over at BSJ, 11 cents a day annual plan. Not only do you get top-notch analysis of all the Boston pro sports, but if you're a Pats junkie, which you are, a membership at BSJ gives you access to a ton of video analysis Bedard does on the coach's film and direct access to him in weekly chats. We got two questions. Let's start with the general BSJ members comment.
Yeah, they're sort of sandwiched together.
All right, so we've got a number of people apparently asking Greg Bedard, Greg, why not Mitchell Trubisky?
Yeah, and this goes to, along with JFPTHWND10 was complaining in the comments section about like, Greg's take committed to Minshew. That's why he's not mentioning Mitch Trubisky. So I wanted to combine these things. And I love you, JFP, but there were a couple things I want to say on this. First of all, Nick, real quick.
Yep.
Breaking news. We need like a little sounder. Chris Godwin is being tagged by the Bucs. So that's one wide receiver off the market, which we thought was going to happen, but I thought I'd say that. Number one, why not Mitch Trubisky? And related to, am I take committed? I have not mentioned Mr. Trubisky because I have asked about Mitch Trubisky, and not one person around the Patriots has mentioned Mitch Trubisky to me or said anything positive about him. If I thought, and look, I'm not going to maybe it's a smoke campaign. Maybe they think he's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they're keeping it off the radar and not telling me. Totally possible.
Smoke screen.
But my inclination from reporting around this team is, I'm talking to people that I trust. They would give me a heads up if they were interested. I don't think there's any interest. Plus, what's Chicago going to do? Chicago's probably going to bring him back some way. So I don't know. I just think Mitch is going to be back there one way or the other. And the other thing I just wanted to say real quick on, don't come over to BSJ and use tired cliches like anything from Barstool or that you hear on Felger and Maz or anything like take committed, because it's a lazy comment. And what it's telling me is that you're just afraid to concede that somebody might have a different opinion than yours. It's a way to dismiss somebody's opinion to say, oh, well, you're take committed. No, it's my opinion. It's my opinion that Josh Allen is not elite. It's my opinion that Tom Brady did not walk on water and teach the Tampa Bay Buccaneers how to play football this year. That is my opinion. I'm not take committed. That's my opinion. And until I'm proven otherwise, I'm not going to change it. And I'm not take committed on Gardner Minshew. I don't give a crap who the Patriots get at quarterback. Like, it could be Mitch Trubisky. I don't care. But I'm telling you what I'm going with my reporting. Maybe it's wrong. Could be wrong. It's been wrong before. Nobody's perfect. But I am giving you my expertise, the sources that I talk to that have been highly accurate over the years. I'm just giving you my opinion. It has nothing to do with being take committed or, being owned or take the L or anything like that. Like, let's just be mature adults and have a rational discussion and say, Greg, I disagree with your take. I don't know why you are so infatuated with Gardner Minshew. I think you should look at Mr. Trubisky. Why haven't you written about him? That is a legitimate question and a legitimate comment. To say Bedard's take committed on Gardner Minshew is not a legitimate comment. I'm sorry. And now I'm off my soapbox.
I enjoyed it. I enjoy Salty Greg. I think the take the L thing, I actually started that, I believe, in Boston radio. When I told Adam Jones a few years ago to take the L when he was just blatantly wrong on something and he kept fighting the good fight. And that's what I told him, just take the L at some point.
That's become almost as bad as when Felger said the other day, Bedard, be better than that. Be better. Be better causes me to lose my crap. Like, yeah, and if you tweet me that,
that's why they do it. So you're feeding into the trap.
Well, I don't care. I mean, like, nobody needs to tell me to be better. I'm trying to be my best. That's what I wrote. And if you come at me and you're serious, and I could take a joke and like people were like hashtag be better, that's funny. But if you seriously come at me and don't like something that I say on Twitter or something that I write, and you say be better, Bedard, you're getting blocked. Like, instantly you're getting blocked. Like, that is no way to treat somebody else. So
I will say this, there's a general misunderstanding between people that listen and read versus the people that write and talk. And here's the disconnect between those two sides. It is our job to try to provide content, come up with different ideas, come up with different opinions. That's how we get paid. That's how we make a living. If you are somebody who is not in the media business, and I appreciate and respect all of you who listen to this podcast and who have listened to me at 98.5 and EEI and ESPN, all these other places, I appreciate you because you're the reason why I have a job. But you have to hopefully understand that for us in the media, we just can't say, all right, we like this guy and, stick with that as being the opinion for the next 3 months. There is an off season. We have to come up. Like I saw people busting Jeff Howe's balls, a month or two ago, like, oh, we're already at this point. And I thought Jeff had a perfect response to it. And I think he does a great job on Twitter responding to some people. I really do. I appreciate and respect the hell out of Jeff Howe. And Jeff at one point said, listen, man, I'm just trying to figure this out like everybody else. So when we talk about the Patriots quarterback position, the truth is none of us have been in this area for this position in a long time. And last offseason, we tried to figure out what they were going to do. And it's our job to try to figure out how the Patriots are going to address their biggest question. And one of the ways that we do that is taking an educated guess, whether it's from intel or information you get like Greg does from his sources, and share that with the people. And instead of the take committed and all of that, I would just wish that some people that consume this stuff, and you can do what you want, you are who you are, but I would just wish that, the people that immediately go to the take committed stuff, absorb the opinion, take it for what it's worth, enjoy it, and then move on. If you disagree with it, then you disagree with it. Who cares? We all have opinions. They're like everybody else. They're like buttholes. Everybody's got them. Everybody else thinks the other one stinks. That's just the way it is, right? So, that's why we try to provide the content. And, hey, if you don't like Greg writing about Gardner Minshew, guess what? You have the freedom to not click on the story and wait until Greg writes about another quarterback and then click on that story and enjoy it and take it for what it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm just optimistic. I'm on schedule to get my first vaccine shot today. So I'm in a pretty good mood. Greg is a little under the weather. He's a little salty. I think we talked about a lot in this podcast, and hopefully people enjoy it. I mean, we've got Florio versus Bedard beef, which I love. We've got Bedard versus some of the readers at BSJ, some beef with them. I love that. We gave you our takes on the trade. We gave you our takes on Jimmy G. We were on the Dan Patrick show.
Buttholes.
We talked buttholes and how they stink. We are going worldwide with this puppy. It's the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles. Be good, be safe, be healthy. We'll talk to you next time.